Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. I'll be talking about my houseplants and some tips and tricks that I have learned along the way of being a new plant parent. Now, I know this is a little bit different from what I usually talk about, which is luxury handbags, but I felt that with most of the world on some sort of stay-at-home mandate, it really just didn't make sense for me to talk about something that you have to experience while going out. And really, since I haven't been able to use my handbags a whole lot, I just didn't have the creative juices flowing in my head just to talk about handbags, and I didn't want to regurgitate something that I had just read on the internet or I had just watched on somebody else's YouTube video. So instead, I've decided to talk about something that I think has been a really great investment for me. So I started collecting plants at the beginning of this year, and during this quarantine period, I think that I have really reaped the benefits of having an indoor garden. So in today's video, I'm sharing with you some of my favorite houseplants as well as some of the tips and tricks that I have learned along the way. Let's begin with my tip number one, which is to choose low light tolerant houseplants. When I first Googled low light tolerant houseplants, I was so shocked to find out that there's just so many varieties of houseplants that I could choose from. So Google told me that I could go with the bromeliad, the sansevieria, spider plants. It said that I could choose a wandering Jew, or if I wanted an indoor fern, the parlor plant as well, the parlor palm, dumb cane, and so many different plants. But once I got all of those plants, I realized that a lot of them did not work for the indoors. The one plant though that I would suggest if you are starting out as a new houseplant enthusiast is the pothos or the devil's ivy. And if you have done a lot of research about houseplants, you'll see that this one is really the number one houseplant to have, simply because it is really indestructible. And when they say low light tolerant, it really means that it can tolerate low light. So the problem with a lot of these low light tolerant houseplants, or the other ones that I mentioned, is that yes, they can tolerate low light, but at the same time, they're not really going to grow. They're not going to develop into very lush green leaves or anything. It's just going to stagnate right there. And it's not really something that you can watch grow, and you won't get a lot of satisfaction from it. So if you are somebody like me who really wanted to experience the growth of new plants, of having new leaves, then I would recommend getting a pothos as your first plant. So this one that I have right here is a variegated variety, and what variegation means is just that the leaves are marbled in color. So this has both the green and the cream colored in each leaf. A word about variegation is that they will need a little bit more sunlight, so you will have to put it in a bright, indirect sunlight area. Any plant that has variegation, and I don't mean to get too technical because I wanted this video to be more for newbie plant hobbyists, but anyways, only the green part of the leaf can photosynthesize. So that's the only part that can produce food. And if you have the variegated leaves, only when you put it out in a sunnier area will it produce that variegation, or most of the time, if it doesn't get enough sunlight, then the leaves will just be all plain green. So just a word of caution if you are attracted to those plants with a lot of different colors or a lot of different variegations like I am. One of my favorite plants is actually the Chinese evergreen, or the aglonema, I think that's how you pronounce it. And I thought that it was a low light tolerant houseplant. The moment I brought it indoors, they all just died on me. And it was just such a waste, and I felt it's an emotional waste because it's very hard also to see your houseplants fall apart and not know how to revive them. But anyways, I was able to put it in an outdoor area, and then suddenly it really revived. And then I have one that is indoors, but what I do is every 2 weeks or so, I do leave it one day outdoors and then I bring it back inside. So you can also do that and rotate your houseplants, especially if you really don't have enough sunlight inside your home, or you really want to put a plant in an area that doesn't get a whole lot of sunlight, and you don't want to just use, for instance, the pothos plant. You want to use something that does get a little bit more sunlight. You can just bring it out and rotate out your plants every 2 weeks. My tip number 2 is to look for plants that can grow in water. And this is not for the reason that you want to grow your plants completely in water. It is actually just because I have found that plants that can grow in water or that can be propagated in water actually have an easier time adapting to an indoor environment. And there are a lot of plants that you can choose from. Some of my favorites include the money tree, the sansevieria, the pothos. Again, you can propagate it in water. I also have a peperomia that is propagating in water, and I really love the way that the peperomia looks. The peace lily, the lucky bamboo, Dracenia also grows well in water. And then if you have kids, growing vegetables and herbs as well is a really great way to get started with houseplants. The other reason why I like plants that can grow in water, and that also includes orchids by the way, is because I find it a lot less messy. So when I first started in growing houseplants, I remember just buying all of these different types of soil. I remember that you have to mix some perlite into it, you have to mix some cocoa husk, and it was just really so confusing, really so messy, and I didn't like having to mess up the whole house every time I wanted to repot a plant, which was very often, because of course once you get into a hobby you really want to just sort of try all of these different things, and I realized very quickly what a mess it can make. The other thing is, if you do choose to grow in a soil medium, or if you are looking for plants that can grow in a soil medium, then there is a solution to that, and that is my tip number 3, which is to use LICA. So LICA stands for lightweight expanded clay aggregates, and that just means it is these clay pebbles. Let me just show you guys quickly right here. These clay pebbles, which is a lot less messy than soil, but it does give the roots of your plant something to cling onto. And I love using this. When I found out that you can use these for most of your house plants, this is what I switched to, simply because it's so much easier to clean up. It doesn't attract any bugs. I use a liquid fertilizer for this, and then I can also plant my plants in clear jars like this and really just look at root growth, which is very satisfying. I would say that it's almost more satisfying than seeing new leaf growth. So I really like the fact that, yeah, I can see the roots growing inside these containers, and the LICA balls work really fabulously because they do allow a lot of air to move through the plants. Again, they do work better for plants that can grow both in water and in soil. Tip number 4 is that propagation is the key to not spending a fortune. So when I first got into growing houseplants, I thought that I would have to spend a whole lot of money, especially since I wanted to add some rare varieties into my collection. But before you begin all of that, the first thing that you should do is actually experiment with the cheaper varieties at first, and also try to see which ones you can propagate, because surprisingly a lot of the rare varieties you can actually propagate quite quickly and quite successfully and not have to spend a fortune. So this one, I do have a video on how to propagate a pothos, and this one is the best one to experiment with because it is very inexpensive and you can find it anywhere. There are a lot of houseplants that I have been able to propagate successfully. I have here a cutting of my peperomia, and it is just starting to show some root growth, so I'm really happy with that. I just got a cutting, just make sure that you look for the nodes, and then I cut below one of the nodes, put it into water, and then I just left it there. This one has been here for about 2 weeks and it is starting to grow. The pothos, again, I have some here. This is an umbrella tree as well, which I am trying to propagate. The Sansevieria, or the snake plant, this is very, very easy to propagate. All you have to do is take a leaf cutting and dump it into water, or because I was having trouble with water because it just kept moving around so much, I decided to put in a little bit of sphagnum moss into here, and that also just helps stabilize the plant, but you can grow this completely in water. The other plant that works very well with water propagation is the money tree. So if you have a lot of offshoots or the branches of the money tree, you can just cut off one and then put it into water. Or what I've done here is I've placed it with a few Leica balls, and then I have a water growing container, so there's just water at the bottom, and then I put it in here and it is growing quite nicely. The next trick that I often use with my houseplants, and still talking about propagation, is using cling wrap. So I use cling wrap right here in order to make a greenhouse effect. And this is my snake plant again, which I have been growing, just to show you guys how it looks. And I'm not so sure if you can see that, but there are little babies already growing here. Again, you can grow this completely in water. This sphagnum moss is just so that the leaves were easier to place in. Oops, that was leaking down. But anyways, yeah, you can see it right there. And then what I did is I just covered it with cling wrap in order to increase the humidity. And that just helps the plant grow a lot faster and produce new offshoots. The other thing that you can use cling wrap for is to increase the humidity of your houseplant. So I have a fern, and since I live in a very hot environment, I usually have the air conditioning on most of the day. So my fern did not look really good, simply because it wanted something that was a little bit more humid, and with the air conditioning on, the air was always dry. So what I did is I actually put the pot in another pot, and then I wrapped it around in cling wrap, and that actually helped retain the moisture inside the soil, and my fern absolutely loves it. Now it is doing really well. The leaves have gone back to being a deep green. Before it was just turning kind of yellowy green, and I really didn't know what to do with it. But when I tried the cling wrap around the plant, it really did increase the vitality of the houseplant. And you can try it also with houseplants, other houseplants like calatheas, which require a lot of humidity as well. I think this trick would probably work. Just remember to put it in a nice outer pot so that nobody sees the cling wrap going around your houseplant.